Greetings to all. So, Chapter 8 begins with the fact that the artist still decided to sacrifice his principles for the sake of the teacher. Before entering the pleasure room, he even apologized for it. As soon as he entered there, he saw a mess, scattered brushes and spilled ink around. But he didn't stay long at the door. Yun told him to hurry through. In addition to the gentleman, there were 3 other guys in the room, so a grandiose picture was planned. Without thinking twice, Yun got down to business. A variety of caresses began, which you can look at Patreon. The artist was in stupor. Of course he knew what to expect, but still, Yun very often opened up from his main process and asked the kid how is the picture doing there. But his partner didn't like it very much. He started saying that Yuna only cares about the artist, but not him. This made Yun very angry. Taking him by the hair, he pushed him away. In the end, only 3 people participated further in the process, counting Yun. During the caresses, everyone discussed the artist among themselves. They thought that they were already some kind of mature man. But Yun was proud and pleased that it turned out to be a young cute kid and that now he draws exclusively for him. Process it was actively developing. All the details were clearly visible. I advise you to also look at it on our channel on another site. The next chapter begins with Joa sitting quietly and reading his depraved books. But then one uninvited guest abruptly decided to bother him. He accepted him because it was still boring to sit at home alone. They started the conversation with the fact that the guest has large circles under his eyes and the reason for this is strong aggression. As a matter of fact, it was caused by Yoon. It was the guy he dragged by the hair. Jaehwa decided that this was a new kind of intimacy and something like that, but the boy interrupted him and said that it was all because of the hated artist. Jaehwa was no longer surprised. Now we are abruptly transferred to the events that were earlier. The passionate caresses of several guys with an amazing figure. One of the bottom after finishing crawled up to the artist and began to consider what happened there on the canvas. When I graduated from Yun, I also wanted to come up and see what happened, but the artist abruptly jumped up from the floor, closed the sheet and said that he would show it later because the picture is not fully ready yet. After these words, he abruptly ran into another room. He fell to the floor after everything he saw and began to satisfy himself. Who would have thought? Because this man condemns such things. We can see again how Jaehwa and that guy communicate and drink a lot of alcohol. How could Mr. Yun do such a lousy thing? How could he humiliate me in front of a plebeian? And then is this artist so damn special? Complaints kept pouring out of his mouth. Jaehwa promised that he would take revenge on him for such behavior. Jaehwa went to do what he promised that very morning, right after that frank conversation. Meanwhile, the teacher and the artist decided to talk quietly. The teacher decided to invite him for a walk. During the walk, they shared with each other that they were very surprised, because for how many years they had not seen each other and finally met here. The teacher said that he came to see, and the artist enthusiastically said that he felt the same. But the point is the fact that he said it in a romantic sense. So the teacher misunderstood him a little. Then we talked about whether the teacher is not afraid to be here. After all, Mr. Yun is very harsh and capricious. A few days ago he even hacked down one of his servants. The teacher was taken aback by such words and scolded his former student for daring to express himself so sharply in the direction of the master. The artist apologized and fell silent. Some time later, the teacher wanted to clarify the rumor that he had heard that Mr. Yun allegedly commits all kinds of lewdness with different people. The teacher also mentioned that they were still discussing an artist who lives in the same house and immediately thought of his student. He looked him in the eye and asked if he was doing what he was doing back then at school. The artist said that of course not and he obeys your teacher. While their conversation was going on, someone broke into the artist's room and of course it was Jaehwa, who was frantically eager for revenge. In retaliation, he ruined the painting so that Yun had nothing to enjoy. After a difficult conversation, the artist went into his room and almost from the threshold stepped into a puddle of water. Coming closer to the painting, he realized that someone had spoiled it, and Yoon was almost dressed and combed. He was just about to go to the artist. I asked the servants where his plebeian was. They said he was in the room. Yoon decided to have breakfast with him. The servants immediately ran to report this to the kitchen, and when the food was already brought, the plebeians realized that some kind of quarrel was going on. Yun saw what happened to that painting and was incredibly angry. The same hour he menacingly I asked who else was in this room today, because the artist was out for a walk. One servant replied that no one was in this room, and the maid said that she saw a teacher nearby. The artist immediately shouted out that his teacher's fault was not here and he did not know who could have done it. Yun also assumed that the artist himself did it, because he initially did not want to draw anything. Yun hit him because he didn't believe him. The artist asked not to be forced to draw anymore, but Yun resorted to manipulation again. So to speak, I decided to remind you that he is quite may affect the fate of his teacher, and he can make him a very important person or make it so that he will never be able to work anywhere else, even in a rural school. Well, he can also drown them both in a well, so that no one will ever know about it. In any case, the artist will be severely punished for this incident. Finally, during the conversation of Jihwa and that sneak, it turned out that the punishment of the artist is menso, when a person is wrapped in matting and several people beat him with sticks. Sneak, even at first I did not understand that this is a punishment for someone who hates so fiercely. I even forgot how I complained about him a couple of days ago. Jihu said that he went and took revenge on him almost on the same day. Well, knowing Yuna, I assumed just such a reaction. After all, this artist is just another toy for him. Next, we just managed to see how the culprit of all this celebration is doing. While he was sleeping sweetly in his room, one of Yun's servants came to him to examine and treat his wounds. But everything was fine and the artist refused. But the servant was very afraid of Yun. Therefore, he insisted that he still let himself be examined. And then there was a conversation between them. The servant said that he had been in service here for 10 years and was still not used to the cruelty of the master. And of course he understands and sympathizes with the artist. Because at first everyone here feels very strong fear. And then the servant says that everything is not just like that and Yun has experienced a real nightmare in the past. Therefore, all that remains now is to accept him as he is. At this time, Jihu decided to come to visit Yun, but he was not waiting for him at all. Jihu offered to have tea together. At the table, he skillfully pretended that he had done nothing and as if nothing had happened asked why Yun was so upset. I heard that a couple of days ago there was a strong conflict in this house because of the artist. Jihu decided that it was quite a good moment to humiliate the artist even more and offered to hire a good artist from the Royal Academy. And then the one you remember is the one. The artist went into the room where the tea party was taking place. Jihu was surprised and indignantly asked what he was still doing here. He didn't answer anything and just told me to wait for him here until he left to talk to his artist. They went out and he asked, taking him by the face, if he was going to run away from the estate again. But the artist just wanted to take a little walk in the garden. Then he asked if he had recovered that he was already going for a walk. And has he thought about his mistakes all the time? The artist replied that his health is normal. Then Yun told him to come to him again tonight. He warned that if he tries to hold it again, then the teacher will definitely not be spiced up. Artist, he said he would definitely be there tonight. And Jihu watched all this dialogue in amazement from afar, and thought, what is special about this kid? Meanwhile, Jihu was very angry. He shouted and threw Yun's servant away, because he promised that the artist would be punished very much. But in fact, he was wrapped in matting, doused with water, and as soon as they were supposed to start beating him, Yun stopped everything. It was very strange, because Yun never backed down from his words. Later, they offered tea again and Yun asked what the hell did it really bring Jihu to him. He immediately started asking about the artist and why, despite the fact that he was ordered to be beaten. Is he safe and sound at the moment? Is it really not enough for you and people of our circle that you decided to take this commoner under your wing? To what extent are you ready to fall for this mutt? Yun immediately closed Tom's mouth and told him not to cross the Jihu line. After all, he thinks he knows everything about Yuna, but he has no idea what is true. Later, Yun ordered Jihu to come to his chambers tonight, but he began to get angry but why should he obey? Yun again resorted to his favorite method, manipulation, and he asked what does it mean that Jihu won't come to him today. He even threw the table out of discontent, because how does this libertine Yun dare to do this to him? But despite his anger and disobedience, he still came to Yun at night, because no matter what he does to him, he will allow such an attitude again and again. Yun starts caressing and flirting with Jihu, even though he tries to pull away, but Yun knows that Jihu's romantic feelings are much stronger and deeper than some stupid grudge. And then, in the midst of all the intimate caresses that you can see on my Patreon, an artist enters, since he also promised Yun to come tonight to capture Yun and Jihu's hot intimacy. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like this manga and you will like it, as well as leave a comment. Bye everyone.